Mr. Fonzone, when you advised the companies referenced, Huawei and others, you were at Sidley?
Yes, that's right, sir.
And when a client comes to Sidley, you have to fill out a form that says, here's my client name, here's my mailing address for business purposes, and here are my political beliefs. That's the way it works.
There's definitely a client intake process. I don't remember all the particulars of it.
I mean, big law it's kind of like who can pay the freight, right?
That's an aspect of the intake process, I'm sure.
I understand. Professor, I'm looking at a letter dated March 16, 2020. It's a letter to Governor Lamont in Connecticut. The title of it is Urgent Action Needed to Protect Individuals in Connecticut's Prisons and Jails from Coronavirus 19 Pandemic. Did you sign that letter?
So I don't recall sitting here today, Senator.
Here's your signature. Here it is back here. Why didn't you turn this over to us when you were asked to submit documents?
So, Senator, I made every effort to search for everything that I had ever signed. That's not a letter I remember, but I will certainly take a look at that. And
we found it just with a search on the internet.
I apologize, Senator.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Hot News Today. Today, we've got a heated moment from a recent Judiciary hearing. Senator John Kennedy grills Professor Russell Fonzone. We'll break down key moments about prisons, immigration, and public safety. Stick around, there's a lot to unpack. Hit that subscribe button for more analysis. Let's get started.
In your letter to the governor, here's what you say. As they stand, prisons and jails are detrimental to public health and human rights and disproportionately harm marginalized communities, including Black, Brown, Indigenous, and other communities of color, immigrants, people with mental illness, people with disabilities, people in the LGBTQ plus community, people who use drugs, people engaged in sex work and street economies, and people experiencing houselessness and poverty. So if you believe that about our prisons, how are you going to ever sentence somebody to prison?
So, Senator, I will need to take a look at that letter, and I apologize that that's not something I found to hand to this committee.
You're not denying you said that.
I do need to see the letter to see the context, because, again, it's not something I remember adding my name to.
Senator Kennedy questions Professor Fonzone about a letter he signed in 2020 to Connecticut's Governor Lamont. Fonzone calls for action to protect people in Connecticut's prisons from COVID-19. His statements have raised eyebrows. He describes prisons as harmful to public health, affecting marginalized communities. This sets the stage for Kennedy's tough questioning. The inconsistency in Fonzone's statements. As Kennedy probes, Fonzone claims he doesn't recall signing the letter, even though there's clear evidence of his signature. Kennedy points out the letter calls for a massive shrinkage of the prison system. How could Fonzone sentence someone to jail if he believes the system is harmful? Fonzone tries to backtrack, claiming he'd need to see the letter to recall the specifics. Kennedy emphasizes it was addressed to the governor, urging real change. If you're enjoying this breakdown, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more content. The questions about public safety. Now let's get into the next big topic, public safety. Kennedy questions Fonzone's letter suggesting people over 55, despite COVID-19 risks, pose little threat to public safety. If older people are low risk, how does that fit with a judge's responsibility? Kennedy asks if all older prisoners should be released, no questions asked. Fonzone doesn't give a solid answer, saying he needs to review the letter.
You said in your letter, Professor, we call on Governor Lamont, State of Connecticut, and all Connecticut jurisdictions to immediate release to the maximum extent possible people incarcerated pre-trial and post-conviction. And then you go on to say, talking once again about our jails, the global COVID-19 pandemic is throwing into sharp relief the untenable state of our penal system and the need for sustained action to shrink its scale, shrink its size, and shrink its scope. You sound here like the district attorney in San Francisco. If you believe that, how are you going to ever sentence anybody to jail, Professor?
I can assure you, Senator, that I understand the role of the judge, and that I can assure you prison time is an appropriate sentence in many cases.
That's not what you say here to the governor. You wrote the governor. This isn't some DoorDash delivery guy. You wrote the governor of your state 3 years ago.
So again, Senator,
you were in law school.
So again, Senator, I would need to look at the letter. It sounds like it was written at the height of the pandemic where governors were looking for
Immigration and public safety in crisis times. Kennedy moves on to immigration. Fonzone's letter claims detention poses public health risks like jails. He urges Governor Lamont to stop transfers to ICE custody. Kennedy doesn't hold back. He asks, if someone is here illegally and commits a crime, how can you justify not incarcerating them? Conclusion, the aftermath, and final thoughts. Kennedy presses Fonzone to review the letter and provide a written response. The pressure is on, and Fonzone has a lot to explain. Will he clarify his position, or will his past statements haunt him? Subscribe for more updates on political hearings. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.